Hello, it's your boy Shaun 26 years old, former model, now podcaster, moving into a YouTube space, hopefully become a PhD student at some point as well. And I'm just here to talk all about my purpose in the world.
You want to tell us about how you got into modelling?
So when I was younger, at an event called Trini's in London, a woman scouted me. She said, would you like to shoot? Would you like to be a model? And I said, why not? I remember I spoke to my mum, and at the time she wasn't too excited on it because she believed modelling was full of quote unquote batty boys or gay guys. So she was very hesitant, but I'm a man that is in control of my own destiny even from when I was young. So I did it, and at the beginning it wasn't going really well. I was rejected so many times, but that's normal, it's a part of life. As life went on, I started getting more agency, started getting more work. Now I class myself more as a former model. I don't model as much anymore. I don't really watch my weight. I want to live my life and do the things that are conducive for me. So I've been able to take so much away from modeling in my experiences, but I would say now I'm more of a former model. Because back in the day when I was skinny, I had my cheekbones, I was doing fashion modeling. That was something that was really big to me at the time. But fashion modeling in itself is a whole minefield. I wouldn't say it's necessarily the healthiest thing. So when I do modeling now, I do more commercial. So it's more smiling, more natural, authentic modeling where I can express my personality a little bit more. So that's currently what I do. But yeah, that's how I got into modeling.
And the commercial is more suited for you then?
I suppose so. It's more realistic. I get to be myself. Whereas I think with fashion and modeling, you're always portraying somebody else's image in terms of the clothes. It's always editorial. And I found in fashion modeling, when I was always doing it, I was always being dressed feminine. I was constantly being made to be feminine. It was as if a black man can't be, strong black heterosexual male. I felt like the gender lines were always being blurred. And I don't have an issue with that necessarily, but I think there was an ulterior motive in some aspects. And when I was discussing it with some people, a lot of black models, they felt the same. I've had a black model friend of mine who he put out a video one day saying that if he had slept with directors, he would have been further on in the modeling industry. And these are male directors because there's a penchant, a desire for a lot of black men. There's like a fetishization within the fashion industry. So I've moved away from fashion, so way more commercial.
And how was the at the beginning when you were getting rejected? How did you cope with all this? Because obviously it must have been hard to you.
Rejection, you have to have thick skin. You can't take things personally. I think if you take things personally, you're in the wrong industry. Whilst there may be a criticism on your body, your face, whatever it might be, it's that person's projection of what they want from you. You might not fit that at the time, but it doesn't take away your value, doesn't take away your worth. As long as you know who you are and you're steadfast in who you are, then you should go into modeling. But if you don't know who you are and you're not confident enough and you're not ready for it, it's something I would highly recommend people staying away from, because I've seen models do all sorts. I've seen models do drugs on set. I've seen models put orange juice on a tissue paper and stuff it down their throat to prevent themselves from eating, but to give themselves a quick sugar rush. So the tissue paper will make you feel full, put it with orange juice, it's a sugar rush. I've seen people do all sorts of madness. I was on a set and a guy he was like, bro, like, do you want some white? And I was like, what do you mean? Cocaine. I was talking about cocaine. And just things like that. You're in an industry where you might not be ready for it. Especially if you're someone who's religious, for example. It's not the industry. I've had, because modest modeling is a thing now where you see more models, Muslims, hijab.
Okay, yeah.
One of my friends wasn't willing to compromise on taking off her hijab for a job, and she left the industry as a result of that. She stood fast to her morals and stood fast to her values. I think to be in modeling, you really have to be flexible. You've got to be quite mutable as an individual and as a person. So yeah.
It sounds like it's cutthroat, man.
It's cutthroat, absolutely. It's cutthroat, and when you're doing drugs, you get the cutthroat jawline. So yeah.
And did anyone teach you about those? Being confident, know about yourself. Did you learn that yourself, or did someone teach you about these things?
I learned it myself. So growing up, I grew up in a single parent home. My mum took care of me. My dad died when I was younger, and you kind of have to learn to fend for yourself. Mothers can do a great job, but a mother can never teach a boy how to become a man. You become your own man. And usually when you have your father, you have an idol to step up to. You have someone to step into their shoes. Or I remember there was a great quote that said, a father said to his son, be careful where you walk, son. And the son said to the father, no, you be careful because I walk in your shadow. It's that kind of thing. So imagine growing up, I didn't have that shadow. I had male role models, but my mother wasn't those kind of mothers where she brought different partners around me. She wasn't that kind of person, and that's something I deeply respect. But I had to become my own man in the sense of I had to learn. I had to be rejected. You know, rejection is one of the most beautiful things. Now I'm at the point in my life where rejection is trial and error for me, and it's also water off a duck's back. If you reject me, I'll come back harder. I'll come back better and stronger than ever. And that's happened. So now I don't like to use numbers to equate my success, because when you quantify things with numbers, with less numbers you can feel devalued. But at the moment I'm on 17k followers on Instagram. Again, that doesn't value my worth, doesn't value your worth to anyone who's looking. But back in the day when I was on like 1,000, and I would message photographers, they didn't want to work with me. Or when I would message people to, you know, shoot with them or to be friends, they didn't want to work with me. But when the numbers started going up, people started noticing, people started taking value. So I was able to take that social, that cultural value from it and put it into something more meaningful. So like my mentality is to leave the world in a better place than I found it. And I think from the experiences I've had in modelling, I've been able to put that into my other ventures, because I've always studied. That's something I've been really passionate about. Modelling's never been something I want to do full time.
What did you study? What were you studying?
I did my undergraduate in criminology and sociology, done my master's in race, media and social justice. I did another level of a master's in leadership, and I also did journalism qualification, so an NCTJ, and I'm doing that, finishing that off recently, and I'm hoping to do a PhD at some point. But I'm even thinking of going back and doing another undergraduate. I'm not too sure, because I just enjoy studying. I love learning. You know, the day you stop learning is the day you stop living. That's my mentality.
So how does the modelling and the studying come together? Like how did that come about?
I suppose to become a great model, you have to study the industry, right?
Yeah.
So I would follow all the top models. I'd follow all the photographers and watch their style to kind of learn my own style. But I'm still learning at the moment. You know, I've never really truly been set. But from me being able to do both, you learn in studying that if you don't put the hours in, you'll fail your exam unless you're hyper intelligent and you can get away with it, right? And unless in modelling you're the best looking in the world or you've got the looks that they want, you might not have to work hard. But for me, not naturally, I think, looking like a model or being a model, you have to study it. You've got to learn what makes you different. You've got to realize that modeling isn't just about looks, it's also about personality. Nowadays it sells, personality sells above everything else. So you have to study that. All of this stuff you learn on the fly. So I looked at test shoots, so shoots where you shoot for free, as work experience. I was going on a job, I was learning, I was understanding how to interact with people. And there were days when my social battery would run thin, because I'm quite introverted naturally. I want to be away from people. I had to learn how to, you know, socialize more with people and kind of push past my own limits and my own barriers to do what other people needed me to do. And as time went on, it just started to become natural, started to become normal. One of my friends now at the moment, I kind of help him out with his modelling. He's just got signed to a big agency in Manchester. He's done jobs with Levi, Specsavers. I'm not his agent or anything, I'm just his boy, but I was able to take what I learned from the industry and help him with that. I was able to take the tips that I learned and impart it on him. So, yeah.
And obviously I know that you've done a TED Talk.
Yes.
How was that? Like, because it's a big thing. TED Talk is a big thing, man.
People recently have been asking me this, and I'm hoping to do another TED Talk in 2021 about parental bereavement, about losing my dad, and how that journey took me it took me to different places, but I'll get into that another day. But with the TEDx Talk, at the time, I didn't expect to get the opportunity. I applied for it, and I said I just want to give a talk on what was originally supposed to be on the black curriculum. I wanted there to be a black curriculum in a black school. But at the time, the guy who mentored me, I'm not going to mention names, he thought the talk was too radical for the setting at the time. It was TEDx Peckham. And what's funny is it was radical back in 2018. But guess what now? We have a black curriculum that's fighting to be part of the national curriculum. Yeah. I was saying that back in 2018. Copyright your boy Shaun Flores, soon to be Dr. Flores. But yeah, back at the time it was too radical. So I dumbed down my talk in the sense of, I said, let's create a black curriculum within the national curriculum. And it's crazy to think back in 2018 I had envisioned that, but somebody else had gone and made it practical, right? So I have to have a lot of respect. So yeah, at the time, I gave the talk, and truthfully, for anyone who hasn't watched my talk, or who will watch my talk, I forgot everything I wanted to say on stage. Yeah. I had stage fright. I remember I walked onto stage, I looked up, I saw the crowd, I saw the timer go, and I forgot everything I wanted to say.
Right.
So I improvised the entire speech off what I remembered that I was supposed to say. So there was a lot of gaps and there was a lot of holes. And for about 2 years, I never watched my speech again. I never looked at it again because it was a bit like I could have done better. I could have been more prepared. And I suppose it showed that I took for granted the opportunity that was presented. But I'm ready for my 2021 talk, hopefully, if I get it. And I'm ready to improve. So that TEDx talk was a fantastic opportunity. It opened a lot of doors for me. But I think in our generation, everybody wants to do a TEDx talk, but some people want to do it for ego and for clout. I'm generally passionate about the things that I speak about. So for me to do that talk set me on a big stage. It allowed people to want to listen to me. And that added cultural and educational value to my modeling. Because when people saw that, hold up, he gave a TEDx talk too, people realized I wasn't just a model. There was more to me. And that's the thing with modeling. People, value you on your looks or the product you sell. But I'm way more than that. I've done a master's. I've done all those degrees. So it was a fantastic opportunity that I'd highly recommend people to apply for. Or some people are always given the opportunity that people reach out to them. So yeah.
So you actually have to apply to feature?
So it depends on the TEDx. So certain TEDx talks you have to apply, yeah. And then there's other ones where they reach out to you. But I think that's more so if you've already got like you are someone in high fame.
Yeah.
I suppose in that aspect. So yeah.
Having talked about all the stuff that obviously that you went through the modeling, through losing your dad, having only your mum at home.
Yes.
Like, what kind of support did you have to obviously through the modeling, through the education? Was it friends, family, to keep you grounded?
I would say I've always kept my feet on the ground because I've always remembered no matter how high I can fly, it's a very big fall back down if I ever went back down. And I think, so growing up, my mum obviously took care of me. When my dad died, it was a sudden loss. He died on Christmas Day when I was 6 years old. And my aunties all promised to take care of me growing up. So I had a lot of feminine, matriarchal energy. It was a matriarchal setup for me. So I had about 4 aunties mainly that helped take care of me when my mother was at work because she's a nurse. So yeah, I always had that support, and they always kept me grounded in the sense of they always said to me, Shaun, when your dad died, we promised we would all take care of you, and they've all stuck to their word. So that sense of humility has always kept me grounded. The fact my mum also took me back to where I'm from, Trinidad in the Caribbean, the land of soca, the wicked waste and the carnival, how the things there. But it humbled me in so many senses. When I went back home to Trinidad, it was a holiday in some senses, but it was an earned holiday in the sense of I still had to clean the yard, I had to cook, I had to clean, and I'm so thankful for those experiences because if I didn't have that, I don't think I would have remained as grounded as I am to go to where my mum's from. And yes, we've got a nice big house out there, but my mum and my family, no matter how rich or wealthy they are, have never allowed wealth to stop them from being who they are. So my mum, when I was younger, she'll tell me stories of she'll wake up at around 5 o'clock in the morning, tend to the animals on the the backyard, get the eggs, get whatever. My mum said she hated killing the chicken, so she didn't do that. She'll get the eggs. If she missed her bus to school, she'd have to walk miles just to get to lesson. And if she got to lesson late, she'll be beaten by the teachers, in school, and then she'll get beaten again at home. My mum just telling me all these stories. It humbled me, and it made me realize that I should need to appreciate education. And because I think in the Western world we get education for free, we take those things for granted.
It's different.
It's a completely different outlook. A lot of my friends growing up were Nigerian, and that Nigerian ethic is a workhorse mentality. They love money, they love family, and they love, especially Christianity or Islam, whichever one. They're steadfast in their morals and their values and their ideals. And just seeing all those things around me humbled me. It reminded me that no matter if I was in Vogue Italia magazine or if I was in other magazines, these achievements are nothing compared to probably what my mother and my forefathers and my forebearers all had to go through. So I suppose it's a compilation of going back to Trinidad, remembering how hard my mum had to work to take care of me, and just looking at my friends around me. Like, I'm blessed to have the friends that I have around me. They keep me humble. They remind me that no matter how big I get, I've still got more work to do. And it's also that mentality of the wolf that is at the bottom of the hill is always hungrier than the wolf that's at the top of the hill. The wolf at the top of the hill has got arrogant. He's looking over. He's well fed. He's looking over the kingdom. And he forgets the wolf at the bottom of the hill is climbing up to take his spot. So I always look at myself as the wolf at the bottom of the hill, and I'm ready to take someone's spot. I remember when I was doing circuit training. So if anyone knows circuit training, like high intensity training, there was a guy called Leon. He was older than me, like 30, and I was around 18. And he used to beat me every time in running and exercise. And I looked at him one day and I said, in a month I will beat you. And in a month I beat him. And I said that to myself, I will beat him. And he said, well done. And small things like that were small wins. But it grounded me too, because it also reminded me that hard work beats talent every single day of the week. You can be as talented as you want, but if you don't work hard, that humbles you as well.
Would you like to share a tough time or an achievement that you've experienced in your life?
So I've got quite a few tough times and a few achievements that I'd love to talk about. I think for me, my biggest achievement at the moment, I think my toughest time was from 11 years old. I was watching porn, I was exposed to it, and of recent, I've gone about 4 months or 5 months without it, if I remember correctly. I've stopped counting. I'm at the point now where I'm not counting. I'm just trying to make it a lifestyle change. And for years I was battling with that, in the sense of I was watching it every day. I would maybe masturbate like 22 times a day at some point. So I was exhausted. I was doing all sorts of nonsense as a result of it. And recently I just decided I'm going to stop. I said I'm going to go cold turkey, and it's been hard. It's not easy, because if something's been ingrained from you since 11, you know, it really sits in your system, it sits in your conscience. So I'm always fighting it, but I'm a much better person today as a result of not watching porn and no longer succumbing to the animalistic urges of masturbation. There's a saying that I run with, that the man that does not succumb to his sexual desires is a powerful man. A man that succumbs to his sexual desires is a weak man, in the sense of men, you know, our penis is our most overused organ, and that's what I was doing through masturbation and porn. I was desensitizing my mind and constantly objectifying women and the world around me, hypersexualizing things. So I've learned so much as a result of staying away from porn and masturbation. And why it's been my biggest achievement was because I'm 26 now, and when am I going to stop? You know, when am I going to stop that? You know, going to therapy has really helped, just having conversations with people that have experienced the same thing, but also having someone to talk to is good. I'd also recommend therapy to everyone. Okay. But I've learned so much about myself through that achievement. Like, other achievements were like the TEDx Talk, that's been good. The Masters was one, featuring some magazines has been one. But I would say the most important win has definitely been porn, masturbation, and even how I'm not biting my nails as much anymore. So I started putting on clear nail polish to stop myself biting my nails. So battling the small wins, because everything's big has small beginnings. So
that's right.
I'd definitely say porn, masturbation, and stopping biting my nails have been one of my toughest things, but my biggest achievements, absolutely.
And did that affect the relationship that you had with women?
You see, that's a very good question, because people ask me this often. I don't think it necessarily affected my relationship with women, but for example, some things were just never enough. You know, you might enjoy whatever you've had with that woman, but then I'll still go home and want more. You know, whether that's healthy or not, I know everyone has different sex drives, but for me, it wasn't doing enough. And apparently I was reading about sexual transmutation. So why a lot of men in their 20s aren't really successful is because we're using that time to almost constantly chase women and constantly get a bust a nut, you know, constantly wanting to reach that euphoric moment, which actually on average only lasts 5 seconds for men, and apparently on average lasts about 25 seconds for women. But I was always chasing it. And with sexual transmutation, it's the idea that when you keep your energy, semen retention, you get to put your energy into other creative outlets as men, and that's so important. And that's why apparently men around their 30s and 40s, they become more successful, because what they were doing in their youth, they shouldn't have been doing, and what you're doing when you get a bit older is what you should have been doing in your youth. That's so right, yeah. Again, but probably porn, masturbation, all these things probably stem from the fact that I couldn't have an open conversation with my mother about sex. You know, anyone who knows Caribbean culture, especially when you grow up with a very conservative mother, talking about sex is almost abhorrent. It's impossible. You can't have that conversation, and I wish I could have had those conversations, but I think porn in some senses became not only visual cocaine, but it became pocket cocaine, because you could have it on your phone. But also as well, it became my teacher. It taught me a lot. And obviously in porn you watch certain things, but you may or you may not put it out in real life, you know. But as a result of that, it became my teacher. It became my counselor in some senses. It would counsel me through dark and hard times. You know, that's a pun, but yeah. Yeah. So in some senses, yeah, it taught me a lot about myself, and being away from it has also taught me I can sit down with my thoughts. I don't have to use porn and masturbation as a pacifier for if I'm going through things that are hard. Again, that's it's not supposed to be a pun, but it comes across as one. But it's taught me a lot. I would say it affected me in some senses because it's the constant hypersexualization, the objectification. But I wouldn't say it's massively impacted. I think it's impacted in very small parts. But even through therapy, I'm still learning where it might have impacted me in a way that I haven't become cognizant or self-aware to.
But you don't look at women in differently, like as, do you still have respect, or you still see them as like beautiful creatures, or just like objects?
I think I've always seen women as beautiful human beings, especially growing up with my mum, growing up around a lot of aunties. But I think at some point in my life, maybe a lot of men can testify to this as well, but you can see sometimes some women as sexual conquest, you know, using the better for a biblical term is a concubine in some senses. And porn advances that kind of mentality, advances that idea that, you know, in porn, when you look at how porn is structured, it's always about a man's pleasure rather than it is a woman's pleasure. That didn't necessarily translate into my relationships or to my dynamics, but the objectification is real. A lot of men don't realize it themselves, you know. You might go out somewhere and you might realize that some men sometimes as a transaction want sex, or they want a favor. So it's about rewiring that thought process and rewiring how I thought. And even speaking to my friends recently, I've gone the longest streak now, and it's become competitive because I think that's healthy competition rather than going out there and perhaps doing what boys at university may do, where they want to sleep with the most girls, they want to do what they can with the most girls. So I'm still on my journey and I'm still learning, and like Malcolm X said, don't be mad at somebody for what they don't know, for you were once that person who did not know. So that's why I try not to be judgmental. I'm in a more empathetic state in my life at the moment, and mindset. I'm learning, as I'm learning about myself, I'm learning about other people around me.